Hello everyone, welcome back to Piedra Designs. This week I've got some cutoffs from the unknown spalted wood bowl that I turned a couple of weeks ago. I'll try to remember to put a link up in the corner, whichever corner it is. And so what we're going to do with these is turn up some pendants. Now, I don't have a fancy eccentric chuck or anything like that, or I don't have screws to make my own wooden jaws for this. So I watched several videos on how you could turn pendants without any of that fancy stuff. So I made up a little jig here. And this will attach into the chuck. I've got a pencil mark here to line up with jaw number 1. And then what I've found is I can get that back in the same spot if, as you're tightening the jaws, you wiggle that just a little bit between the previous marks from where it was in the chuck before. I don't know if the camera can see those. But if you keep wiggling that just a little bit between those two marks as you tighten the chuck, it'll come back to the same spot. And then for the next, to attach these on here to start with, I'm going to use some double stick tape. And again, that's something else. I don't have fancy special for wood turners double stick tape. This is just some carpet tape from the hardware store. But I did turn one of these as I was making the jigs so that I could get everything right, and I didn't seem to have any issues with this tape holding this for this project. Fun part's always trying to get the backer off. And I did scribe some circles on there and cut them out on the bandsaw over at Dad's place. So I've got kind of a center point marked already. And so I can put that roughly where that center hole is. It's not super critical that we're perfectly centered, but then we'll just put some pressure on this with the tailstock. Give that 10 or 15 minutes for the tape to adhere good to both the chuck and the piece we're going to turn. All right, so that's had a few minutes to set. If you're wondering what this paper is here, this grizzly lathe was, I finally discovered in some of my pin turning. The tailstock was slightly low center height, and so I took a piece of paper and folded it in half and put under that tailstock, and that seemed to bring it up just right. Gonna be taking this down at about 2500 RPM. I am just taking light cuts because we are only using double-sided carpet tape. I need to get me a center line on here. Just so I know how far down we can take this. Okay, and that's ready for a little sanding now. The one issue I did have when I was making the jigs, I had the pendant come off the lathe when I was doing the other side, and it's hot glued on, and I was sanding at full speed and the piece just got too hot and the glue turned loose, so I'm going to turn the speed down to about half of what we were turning at. Okay, that's sanded up through 400. We'll get it cleaned off and get a coat of sanding sealer on it. The sanding sealer I use is just a store-bought shellac, cut down about 50% with denatured alcohol. We'll give that a few minutes to dry. So that's had a few minutes to dry. I'll just use a little bit of 600, give it a quick denibbing. And then I've got 4 more blanks to get down to this stage before we're ready to change out our hold point. So I'll get those done up and I'll bring you back when we're ready to, well, I guess maybe you want to see that one come off. Just apply some steady side pressure. It'll come off just that easy. So I'll get these other 4 turned up to that stage, and then I will bring you back when we're ready to change out the hold point. All right, so I've got the 5 of them turned up, so we're done with our flat-faced chuck. So now we'll put our dished face chuck on there. And we're running true. So all of these are 2¼ inches. So I'm just gonna mark inch and an eighth on here roughly, so I have a visual reference for lining these back up. And then you can see this other hole here. This is where it's going to get drilled for attaching the cord. So if you had a piece that you were needing to orient in a certain way, you can line that up. This would be the top of the pendant. If you had something that it mattered what was the top, you can line it up with that. These, it doesn't really matter. I'm gonna try to line it up so that it looks like mountains or something. Gonna just put a little bit of some hot glue around here. Get that lined up as best as you can with the line. Put a little pressure on there, and we'll give that a couple of minutes for that glue to cool down and get a grip on that, and we'll be back and start turning it. All right, that glue should be cured up now. And we're running fairly true. It's not perfect, but it doesn't have to be. We'll get that back up to our 2200. Alright, I'll get that sanded up now. Back down at about 1100 or 1000, just so we don't overheat. Clean that off with a little denatured alcohol. Careful not to get down on the back side and have it releasing our glue. Sanding sealer. And we'll give that a few minutes to dry and come back when we're ready for the next step. Alright, that's dried up and denibbed. And now we got to move to the off center, and this is where this slows you down a little, this method on a production run, because you can't just do that and take that one off and do the next one, because then you got to put it back on for the off center. Now I've got a hole drilled out here. That's 5/8 inch off center. I kind of figured out the size of hole I wanted to do and how much overhang I wanted it to have, or how much meat left at the top of it. And with the 1/4 inch hole that I'm gonna drill, 5/8 offset was about right. All right, and then for the first fire on that, all right, we'll drill this hole out, turning at about 600 RPMs for this 1/4 inch hole. Got a 1/4 inch brad point bit, and we'll just go real slow to minimize any tear out that might happen on the back side. Not that it matters too much if we get a little tear out, because like I said, we gotta turn it back around and do the shaping around the hole. And with this off center, I turn that speed down a little bit. As you can feel just a little bit of vibration in the lathe, but that's at 1600. Since this is end grain, we're gonna back cut this a little bit. And then I just kind of try to take it where I've got this dish coming out about halfway between the edge and the edge of the center hole there. And that's not quite halfway. That's a little better. All right, we'll sand that up and I'll get a little finish on that. And then bring you guys back when we're ready to turn it off and hollow out the other side around the cord hole. All right, time to get that off of there. I discovered kind of just the easiest thing is just very carefully with a paper towel to protect it, stick a screwdriver in there and kind of pry that off enough that then you can get a hold of it. Wow, that glue must be a little stronger than the last stuff I used when I was making these jigs and turning that first one. That pulled off some of the plywood on the... Anyway, I'll use a little denatured alcohol and get this glue back off of here. All right, so we got all that glue cleaned off of there. I still can't believe how much that glue stuck and just pulled apart that Baltic birch plywood. Anyways, now we got to turn this back around on here so we can dish out around the cord hole there on that side. And what we'll do is we'll just line that up with the hole here versus where it came through, and be sure we're centered as good as we can get with our black line. And then I'm just going to put a little bit of glue, because now that we're off center and we've got a domed shape, I can't use the tailstock to apply pressure and have this, see how much it wants to rock. I think part of that's probably because we've got a big chunk of it pulled out of there now. Trying to put a good run of glue here, but not get it right up to the top, just so that I don't run into that with the gouge if I happen to spill glue, get glue a little too far down the face of it. All right. I think that looks like that's pretty even. We'll give that a couple more minutes to let that glue dry, then we'll get that dished out. All right, that glue's dried up a little, and you can see we're not 100% true, but we're close enough. So we'll get that dished out. And that's ready for sanding now. I don't think I mentioned it on the other side, but when you're sanding this dish out, you want to be careful that you don't get back in here and ruin your sanding job. Kind of like I did with the gouge there. Had to take that back a little bit farther than what I wanted to. But that's all right, we got it. All right, I think that's ready for a little sanding sealer. Then we'll get this guy off of there. Just because I'm running out of time to get this video done and edited, I'm not gonna be able to show you guys these other 4 completed, but they'll just go through the same process. I'm gonna get this finished up, get it off of here, and I'm probably gonna spray a coat or 2 of lacquer on it, and then we'll come back and show you the finished piece. All right, so here it is done. This is our wood pendant. It's 2 1/4 inches in diameter, and it's around about 3/8 of an inch thick. I just took some simple 2mm leather cord on this one. I just tied the end of it, and we've got about 2 coats of lacquer sprayed on this, I think was what I ended up with. And I can, since I don't have a buffing system, I can take this over to Dad's and use his buffer. This is the other one that I had turned up while I was making the jig. It's just got a wax finish on it. And same thing, I can go buff that up. On this one, I did put some actual jewelry findings on the end of that. These are super glued onto the leather, and then I soldered the jump ring on there, so it's a fairly secure piece. Anyways, I know the jig isn't the fastest way if you're trying to turn a bunch of these to give as gifts or sell at a craft show or whatever, but it works for me without having any of the other fancy tools, eccentric chucks and whatnot to get things done with. This method worked for me, and it's not perfect. It's good enough if you're interested in trying to turn up some pendants. Anyway, that's the video for this week. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. Or if you didn't, give it a thumbs down. Leave me a comment. I try to respond to everything. If you haven't already done so, be sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the little notification bell. That way you won't miss any of my future projects. From Piedra Designs, thanks for watching.